This is a lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 11, Text 32. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let me know when you want me to begin.
You can begin and then the people will join
Okay.
one by one.
All right. Because we're already live on YouTube and Facebook. Okay, so you want to Jai Radha Madhav Kirtan? Is that, how do you do it? Okay, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Atira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Tato Jayamudirayet
Tato Jayamudirayet
Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu
Nashta Prayeshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So Srimad Bhagavatam Skanda 1 Adhyaya 11 Shloka 32. I'll just read the verse and the padapat, right? Yeah. Tamatma Jair Drishti Bhirantaratmana Duranta Bhavaf Parire Bhire Patim Niruddhamapya Shravadambu Netrayor Vilajjani Tam Briguvarya Vaiklavat Pada Pataha. Pada is the words, Pataha reading. Tam, him the Lord, Atma Jayihi, by the sons, Drishti Bihi, by the sight, Antara Atmana, by the innermost part of the heart, Duranta Bhavaha, insuperable ecstasy, Parire Bhire, embraced, Patim, husband, Niruddham, choked up, Api, in spite of, Ashravat, tears, Ambu, like drops of water, Netrayoho, from the eyes, Vilajitanam, of those situated in shyness, Briguvarya, O chief of the Brigus, Vaiklavat, inadvertently. A translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The insuperable ecstasy was so strong that the queens who were shy first embraced the Lord in the innermost recesses of their hearts. Then they embraced him visually, and then they sent their sons to embrace him, which is equal to personal embracing. But, O chief amongst the Brigus, although they tried to restrain their feelings, they inadvertently shed tears. Purport. Although due to feminine shyness, there were many hindrances to embracing the dear husband, Lord Sri Krishna, the queens performed that act by seeing him, by putting him in the cores of their hearts, and by sending their sons to embrace him. Still, the act remained unfinished, and tears rolled down their cheeks despite all endeavors to check them. One indirectly embraces the husband by sending the son to embrace him, because the son is developed as part of the mother's body. The embrace of the son is not exactly the embrace of husband and wife from the sexual point of view, but the embrace is satisfaction from the affectionate point of view. The embrace of the eyes is more effective in the conjugal relation, and thus, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, there is nothing wrong in such an exchange of feeling between husband and wife. That's the end of the purport. So, what's the time frame, Jayadwaj Prabhu?
8:30, and then some questions.
So now it's 7:40, approximately. So, Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, returned to Dwarka from Hastinapur, right? I think that's the title of the chapter. And he had been away in Hastinapur for some months, leaving his 16,108 queens in their palaces. Now that's described later on in the Dashamaskanda, the 10th canto, where Narad Muni visits the palaces of Lord Krishna, sees him in each separate palace with a separate wife, engaging in grihastha karya, household activities. So this was amazing for Narada. And although this is described here in this Pratamaskanda, first canto, it's actually because no ordinary man can live in 16,000 palaces with 16,000 wives, and with each wife, it's described in the Dashamaskanda that Lord Krishna had 10 sons and 1 daughter. So there were many thousands. I'm very bad at mathematics, but 16,108 times 10. What is it? 1,600,000. I can't, offhand. Sorry, I'm so bad at math.
160,000.
160,000? Is it only that? Okay. And then they themselves married and had children. We read about in the 10th, again, the Dashamaskanda, 10th canto.
Your recording has reached the maximum length. To replay your message, press 1. To delete and re-record your message, press 3.
Sorry. So the Dashamaskanda, 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, describes the marriage of Aniruddha, right? Aniruddha with the daughter of Banasura, Usha and Aniruddha. So Aniruddha is the grandson of Krishna, and his father was Pradyumna. And the story of Pradyumna is also related in the 10th canto, where when Pradyumna was a small baby, a demon kidnapped him Now, that's also Leela. That's a pastime of the Lord, because Pradyumna and Aniruddha are expansions of Lord Krishna. They are themselves all-powerful expansions of Vishnu Tattva. They're not jivas like us. They're not subjected to the trials and tribulations of birth, death, old age, and disease. So if Lord Krishna wants to be kidnapped and thrown into the ocean, this is what happened according to Bhagavatam. Pradyumna was taken away from the house and thrown into the ocean and swallowed by a fish. A large fish was caught by that large fish was caught by a fisherman and sold in a market. Now, one may ask, well, how could there be a fish market in Dwarka? But fish markets are very old, and low-class people eat fish. In fact, we are a Bengali sampradaya. I was fortunate enough that during the last time I visited Mayapur, I had the association of Bhakti Prabhupada Vrat Damodar Maharaj, who I think is on the call, and whose voice I heard telling me it was 160,000 children. And, you know, whenever I'm in Mayapur, I go for a very long walk of about 7 or 8 kilometers. I guess that's like 5 miles. And I see men on bicycles with aluminum containers, long aluminum containers, delivering fish door to door to Hindus, what to speak of the local Muslims. So it's, you know, there's data that I've seen online that in Bengal and Orissa, you know, 98% of the people eat fish. So, you know, this is surprising and shocking, because our sampradaya is from Bengal, and our gurus and our acharyas have ordered us not to eat fish and even onions and garlic. So how is this happening? And it's apparently 5,000 years old. Dwarka, of course, is the western coast. And if you go along the coastline today in Gujarat, where Dwarka is situated, all along the coastline are villages of fisher people. And that's not only true for Gujarat or Bengal and Orissa, but the whole India, wherever. And India is like a big peninsula in one sense, because surrounded by oceans. So am I trying to condone fish eating? No. It's in the mode of ignorance, tamasic. And those who want to advance in spiritual life don't eat fish. You know, Lord Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita that very few people will try to become perfect, right? Manushyanam sahasreshu. Out of thousands of men, sahasra is 1,000. Sahasreshu, among thousands, within thousands. Manushyanam, of human beings, of men. Kaschid, maybe one. Yatati, they endeavor. Siddhaye, kaschid yatati siddhaye, for becoming perfect. So most people are very least concerned with becoming perfect. And even though, you know, Srila Prabhupada's desires are being fulfilled in many ways by massive book distribution all over India, which is far and away, ISKCON India is the #1 book distributing country in the world. Of course, it's a very big country with many languages, and there are many books in many languages now. I'm Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, aimed at reforming the human society. But human society doesn't reform so easily because most people aren't interested. They would rather go on eating fish. So Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschid Yatati Siddhaye. Very few people try to become perfect. And what is perfect? Perfect means to become situated in the mode of goodness. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam in the Bhagavatam. Offhand, I didn't memorize. I memorized some of it, but not the whole thing. So Sattvam Vishuddham, pure goodness. And that's also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Mam cha yo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitya etan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. I think that's 5, end of 5th chapter. Avyabhicharini bhakti yoga, avyabhicharena bhakti yogena, by pure, without corruption, bhakti yoga.
End of 14th chapter.
Oh, thank you, Maharaj. Mam, to me, chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena, one who serves me, Krishna tells Arjuna, with that devotion that is free from these gunas. That's what it, because later on, mam chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate, sagunan samatitya. Atitya means crossing over, going beyond the gunas, rajogun, tamogun, sattvagun, mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Sagunan samatitya etan gunan, those gunas, those 3 modes. Brahmabhuyaya kalpate, one comes to the spiritual platform. So one has to give up this fish eating and meat eating and illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, those things that are tamasic and bind the jivas to the material bodies one after the other. One has to give them up. He has to cross over. So, excuse me, in this pastime, the demon who wasn't concerned with spiritual perfection, who was eating fish, his servant purchased the fish in the market and brought the fish home. And the cook, a servant woman, cut open the fish and saw the baby in the fish. Now, by the arrangement of Lord, this servant woman was an incarnation of Rati, the eternal consort of Kamadev. Kamadev is Cupid in English. The Lord of sense pleasure, Kamadev. Deva means Lord or God or demigod. We understand, I think our acharyas have taught, that Kamadev is Vishnu. It's an incarnation. Pradyumna is Kamadev, so it is directly Vishnu. And Rati raised him as a mother would raise a son, but then when he grew up, she wanted to marry him. And because Kamadev is all attractive, Vishnu is all attractive, Krishna means all attractive. They had grandson. Boy, what a big tangent, huh? I hope you don't mind. But these are stories from the Bhagavatam. So back to the verse. So why all of that tangent that I got on was because it had to do with Krishna and his queens. Or the topmost queen, or the foremost queen, is Rukmini, and then Satyabhama. And in many temples, particularly in South India, they have Rukmini and Satyabhama, but they also say Sri Devi and Bhudevi, Lakshmi and Mother Earth, Bhudevi. Some places it's Rukmini and Satyabhama. Depend on the temple. So these forms of these queens are eternal associates. So if Krishna comes in the material world, these eternal associates come with him, and they have eternal love for the Lord. Now, how to, attain that same love? That's what bhakti is for, to develop love for the Supreme Lord. Now, here's a difference between the queens and us. We can't see the Lord. There are several instances where very great devotees mentioned in the Bhagavatam see the Lord, but only for a moment or only once in their life. A Bhakta Dhruva comes to mind. After eating only leaves and standing on one foot for 6 months in the forest, the Lord appeared to him. And the Lord told him, you won't see me again in this life. Oh, and the other one is Parikshit. Parikshit saw the Lord when he was in an embryonic state in the womb of his mother, because Ashwatthama invoked and cast the Brahmastra to destroy him, because he was the only male heir to the throne of the Pandavas. And Lord Krishna protected him by absorbing that Brahmastra. And Lord Krishna, Vishnu, told that embryonic Parikshit, you won't see me again in this life. So to see the Lord is very rare. The queens you can only imagine the fortune of these queens, that they could see Lord Krishna every day. But sometimes he went away. And if we talk about the gopis who were having conjugal relationship as very young girls who were only 8 years old, when Krishna was in Braj, before killing his maternal uncle Kamsa, and then leaving Braj permanently, settling in Mathura, and then coming to Dwarka, after many, many years, it was Balaram who went to Vrindavan, because Balaram Purnima was just a couple weeks ago, 2.5 weeks back. And then Janmashtami was just, what was it, 30th? Today's 10th. It's 11 days ago. So 1 more week. So, okay, 18 days, almost 3 weeks ago. Balaram. We're reading the story of Balaram visiting Vrindavan from Dwarka. Lord Krishna didn't go. Lord Krishna never went back in the manifested pastimes 5,000 years ago. But Balaram went back, and he had Ras Leela with the gopis for 2 months, every night. Of course, in the description of Ras Leela with Krishna in the childhood, it says that the Ras Leela is eternal. It's still going on. So these things are very difficult to understand, because we're in the material world. We're contaminated. And we need the mercy of the Lord to see him. And that's what he says in Bhagavad Gita, right? That Tesham satata yuktanam, those who are always engaged, bhajatam, worshipping me, dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te, tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam, with affection. Priti purvakam is a compound, and it means having affection or affectionately. Now, here in this verse, the affection of the queens for Krishna is described. And they could not control their affection, but they were following a certain, what we call, well, what is called in Sanskrit, shishtachar, morality. Now, being from families of Malechas and Yavanas, we didn't have that Vedic morality in our childhood. And the system of Varnashram that was followed by the Rajas, the kings in India, for thousands of years, and that's what Gita says, evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu, the Rajarshis, those who were rishis and rajas at the same time, kings and sages. How is it possible? Because they studied Vedas and they had Vedic culture, Vedic sanskaras. That's why they're called Rajarshis. They had a certain system of behavior. And because we live in a world dominated by Malechas and Yavanas who don't follow the Vedic system of behavior, there is all kinds of perversions and abuses, and I think the word is atrocities. Man's inhumanity to man, because they don't follow the Vedic system. This is our faith. This is our belief. People think, well, the other religious traditions and they're also teaching how to behave properly. Maybe to a certain extent, we don't condemn them, but what we condemn is killing of cows, killing of animals in slaughterhouses, and a lack of a totally holistic morality, if you want to use this type of a word, that we find in the teachings in Vedic literature. Now, the history of Bharata was that when Buddha avatar came, he opposed the Vedas. And when you oppose Vedas, that means you're opposing Vedic culture and Vedic literature. And although Buddhism seems to be very similar to the Vedic concept, because they believe in karma and, action and reaction, good karmas and bad karmas, the word karma is an everyday word now, here in the United States. There's credit karma, there's, for advertising and for businesses, they're using the word karma. And we may think, and I'm not debating it, that it's due to the influence of Srila Prabhupada spreading Krishna consciousness, but you also have to give some credit to Buddhism because they have spread their ideology, which has become popular among intellectuals and, a section of the population here in the West. When Srila Prabhupada came,
7 o'clock.
When Srila Prabhupada came to the US in the very beginning, he was endorsed by a very popular, call him a literary figure, intellectual, Allen Ginsberg. I think our Bhakti Prabhupada Damodar Maharaj might have even met him personally. I don't know. But
Yeah, I had some dealings with him.
right. So I went to his wiki page the other day, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and it says there Allen Ginsberg was a Buddhist. So although Ginsberg, he was a popular figure in the late 1950s and early 1960s in some circles, put it like that, he wasn't everyone didn't know of him, but certainly intellectuals in the East Coast and the West Coast of the US, he was a famous person among intellectuals and among the youth. And he was older. He was, I think, in his 40s, close to 40 years of age at that time. So he chanted Hare Krishna with Prabhupada. And he introduced Prabhupada in San Francisco when Prabhupada there was a big program when he first arrived there Today is Friday, and Monday morning I'm traveling to San Francisco, and I will be present at the Berkeley Temple for Radhastami. I've been asked to give a lecture there, and I feel unfit and incompetent to do that, but anyway, I probably will. So, even though Ginsburg associated with Prabhupada, but he embraced this atheistic Buddhist ideology. So, what happened in India when Buddhism was, Buddha, we believe, is a jiva who was empowered by Krishna to stop animal slaughter in the name of Vedic sacrifices. That still goes on, but I guess it isn't as popular as it was at that time. But in Calcutta, there is the Kali temple where they kill goats and, offer it to Kali. It's still done on a daily basis there, as far as I understand. And other Durga temples are there where they offer live goat sacrifices. So these things, we believe, in Kali Yuga, they shouldn't be done. And Buddhism was an out-and-out attack on the Vedic concepts while embracing Vedic concepts. So Buddhi means intelligence. Buddha means wisdom. And their contention is that it's just wisdom is enough. Faith in Ishvara is not required. And that's where Vedic culture and Vaishnavism has a major problem with Buddhism, because there is no worship of Ishvara, the supreme controller. And the Bhagavatam is glorifying Krishna Lila, the pastimes of Lord Krishna, and that he came from the spiritual world to this material world to display those pastimes. Now, part of those pastimes is a certain morality. That morality was established, right at the beginning of creation. And we see in Lord Krishna's pastime, in the pastimes of Lord Krishna, that he followed the Vedic morality. For example, when Narada was visiting those palaces, he saw Krishna was performing Vedic fire sacrifice every day in one of the palaces. And that was a system. The system was Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas would study Vedas. And Yajna, these are two of the 6 occupations of a Brahmana, to perform Vedic sacrifice and to have others perform it on their behalf. So every Brahmana is supposed to have 3 fires burning in his house. Those Brahmanas that have those fires burning 24 hours a day, and that every day, they don't spend the whole day, but there's a certain time when they're supposed to sit and offer ahutis, oblations, to the fire. And then they cover that fire with cow dung, thick pieces of cow dung, and that slowly burns in the nighttime, so it never goes out. So it's called Nitya Agni Hotra. Always the fire that's always burning, and every day the oblations are offered. And that system is much easier to perform when one lives in a village, because then you get the cow dung. And in big cities now in India, there's a gas pipeline. In our temple, we have a gas pipeline. Even though we have 120 cows, we don't use the cow dung to cook. It's a lacuna. It's unfortunate. But this is the state of urban life. But when there's a village life, agrarian life, and this was followed all over India, Brahmanas would keep these 3 fires burning. Oh, I didn't mention the names of the fires. Garhapatya, Ahavaniya, and Dakshinagni. These were the 3 fires that an Agnihotri had to keep in his house. So they would have a separate room where the fires, there was a Yagna Kund, small ones, and the fires were burning, and ahutis were offered for a few minutes in the morning according to the Yathavidhi, according to the system. Krishna himself was doing that. If you read carefully, I don't know the exact verse as I mentioned this, but guess I should do some research and find it out. So besides these religious activities and meditation also, Krishna was meditating on himself. That's also mentioned when Narada visited the palaces. There was also a certain morality, and it's much different from modern morality. For example, modern morality, a woman can walk around in a t-shirt and what do you call it here? Shorts, and very short shorts. And in Vedic culture, that wasn't the case. Shatika, sari. When Prabhupada came to the West, that's how he trained his disciples. And he didn't invent some new idea for the disciples, but he wanted to transplant that culture. And the culture of, advertising sexuality, that's what it is really animal life. It's not, there's a good verse in the Bhagavatam. If you give me a minute, it's right here in front of me. I just have to dig it out. Prabhupada made interesting comments in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 7:12-9, where the translation is, woman is compared to fire and man is compared to a butter pot. This is the translation, 7:12-9. Therefore, a man should avoid associating even with his own daughter in a secluded place. Similarly, he should also avoid association with other women. One should associate with women only for important business and not otherwise. So, that was a Vedic culture. The free mixing of men and women didn't exist in Vedic culture. The women associated with women, the men associated with men, and if there was a woman, selling fruit, you would associate with her to get the fruit. That's in the 10th canto, right? Lord Krishna was playing outside of Nanda Bhavan, and a woman came with fruit, and being attracted by Lord Krishna, she gave him all of her fruit. And when she looked in her basket, she saw it was filled with gold. So Lord Krishna blessed that woman. But that is called important business. Purchasing, of course, in those days, there was no money like we, printed money like we have. Even the printed money is going away now. Anyway, in the purport, Prabhupada writes, I won't read the whole purport, but the last sentence, last paragraph, last couple of sentences. Therefore, Vedic civilization carefully restricts mingling between men and women. If one cannot understand the basic principle of restraining association between men and women, he is to be considered an animal. That is the purport of this verse. Now, this was a concept that Prabhupada wanted to teach. He taught. Wanted to teach is the wrong way to say it, I guess. Prabhupada taught that men and women shouldn't mingle. And if you empower women to be managers and leaders, they're going to mingle with, the people they're leading. And that's going on in an institution founded by Srila Prabhupada, which means that they're neglecting his instructions. I'm sorry, I have to say this. Prabhupada's example was he did not appoint women to positions of managerial or leadership of his institution during his lifetime. Why is it happening now? Well, neglect for what Prabhupada taught, neglect for the fact that there's an ancient tradition that Prabhupada represented and that he wanted us to imbibe. And all of the excuses that are being made to support the free mixing of men and women in ISKCON contradict what Prabhupada clearly wrote in his purports and what he did. And that doesn't mean that we hate women. By propagating this idea, those who support women being managers and leaders, they say that we are misogynists. We hate women. But that's, I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have affectionate dealings with them. So I don't hate women. I mean, it's just a false accusation meant to malign, myself. Now, of course, I'm a very fallen soul. And, people don't agree with what the funny thing is, people don't agree with what Prabhupada wrote. Now, there's an example in history. Prabhupada had a servant. I never met him. I think he left ISKCON 50 years ago. But you can read in the letters and conversations, his name was Aravinda. Maybe Maharaj met him because I wasn't around in those days. I joined much later. And when the United States claimed to have landed on the moon in 1969, I joined 4 years later in 1973. But this Aravinda became, when Prabhupada said, no, it's not possible that they went to the moon. This is a hoax. This is misleading everyone. So this Aravinda became dejected because he believed that they went to the moon. Now, this is a subject of debate, but Prabhupada's opinion was very clear. How could they go to the moon when the moon in the sky is further away from Earth than the sun? And what humanity was told by the United States government or the other governments of the world is that it only takes 3 days traveling at, whatever speed they were traveling at. I can't remember all those mathematical calculations to reach the moon. So when this Aravinda actually left Prabhupada on this, due to this, he was very unhappy that Prabhupada said we didn't go to the moon. And he was convinced that the United States, NASA? Aeronautics and Space Association, National Aeronautics and Space Association announced that a man had landed on the moon. The only proof, of course, are rocks. There's no other proof. There's videos, but video can be made anywhere. So Aravinda left Prabhupada's association, and Prabhupada said, I can understand if he didn't believe me, but Vedic Shastras say that the moon is after the sun, beyond the sun. So it was technically impossible for them to go there in 3 days and come back in 3 more days. So when we say Prabhupada's opinion, we have to understand that Prabhupada was presenting Vedic concepts that are in Vedic literature. He was not inventing something on his own. He wasn't a cult leader. Follow me because I'm the greatest. I remember meeting a sannyasi in Nagpur in 1975. sorry, 77. And he said, take sannyas from me, I am the greatest. That's what he told me. He's long gone. He was a Mayavadi. We happened to be staying in their ashram because it was cheap. And, they had sattvic food at the ashram, without onion and garlic. And we were in the town for enrolling life members. So, there are people that feel that they're God. There are many such cults. I mean, no need to name the names. And they mislead their followers. Prabhupada so many times said, I am not God, you are not God. Krishna is God, and we are all servants of God. But because we're in the material world, we have to follow morality that will take us to God and make us righteous and elevate us to Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. Being free from all influences of the mode of passion and ignorance. And attaining that is very, very difficult. I know for myself, I haven't attained it. I mean, I'm a long way off. And so, as Prabhupada wrote in his prayers on the Jaladuta when he was coming to the US, that he wrote that, I know, dear Lord Krishna, I know that I will have to take crores of births. A crore is from the Sanskrit word kotihi, 10 million. And so if Prabhupada could write like that, then, what is our position? He used to say, go back to Godhead in this life. And because if you're born again in Kali Yuga, it's very miserable. Or if you're born again as an animal, Bharat Raja, that's son of Rishabdev, one of the 100 sons, the eldest of the 100 sons, had to take birth as a deer, and then Jad Bharat. So our next life is not, I mean, what are we compared to Bharat Raja, who's the son of Rishabdev, who's another Shaktiavesh avatar? Who are we? I mean, what chance do we have of going back home, back to Godhead? The chances are very, very slim. They're not very great. And then you diminish your chances by rejecting what Prabhupada taught. You have to follow what Vedic culture and the guru, the acharyas, teach. I mean, I was pretty surprised to see that a section of our devotees, I won't get into specific names, are sponsoring a seminar on women's empowerment. And, what does this mean, women's empowerment? Boy, it's just, I mean, Prabhupada was against all of these concepts. Can I quote, give me 1 second, because Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada's purport in the 4th canto, 16th chapter, I want to read. The Raja, who used to glorify the king. So they were glorifying King Prithu. I gotta start it again. Edit. It says edit. No, that's wrong. Oh, okay, it's going on. So the Vandijan, there was a community of people who used to glorify kings. So it's described in the 4:1623. I'll just read the translation and the purport. When the lion travels in the forest with its tail turned upward, all menial animals hide themselves. Similarly, when King Prithu will travel over his kingdom and vibrate the string of his bow, which is made of the horns of goats and bulls and is irresistible in battle, all demoniac rogues and thieves will hide themselves in all directions. So they were glorifying Prithu, the Vandijan. But in the purport, Prabhupada writes, it is very appropriate to compare a powerful king like Prithu to a lion. In India, Kshatriya kings are still called Singh, which means lion, unless rogues, thieves, and other demoniac people in a state are afraid of the executive head who rules the kingdom with a strong hand, there cannot be peace or prosperity in the state. Thus, it is most regrettable when a woman becomes the executive head instead of a lion-like king. In such a situation, the people are considered very unfortunate. So, this whole empowerment of women by a section of our devotees, I think, is not in line with what Prabhupada's opinions were. Prabhupada's teachings were women should, be housewives, grihinis. And that's what Krishna's queens were in Dwarka. We don't read about them, engaging in warfare, which now the United States and Israel and certain countries have all these women in the military and in leadership positions. Prabhupada calls it highly regrettable and most unfortunate. Very unfortunate. So the movement for the gender equality is not in consonance with the teachings of Vedas and Vedic literature. The wives of the Brahmanas were great devotees of Krishna, mentioned in the 10th canto, Dashamaskanda, I think it's the 23rd chapter. And when they gave up everything and came to Krishna, Lord Krishna told them, now go back and assist your husbands. They said, how can we go back? We already left them. No, they're waiting for you. They will accept you. Now, Krishna could have said, you're better devotees than your husbands. You do the sacrifices and they'll cook and clean and take care of the children. He didn't. So this Varnashram system is created by Lord Krishna, Chaturvarnam Maya Shrishtam. And women have their own duties. And, they have their own qualities. And modern society, a section of modern society, not everyone, wants to somehow erase that. And that's nonsense. But it is Kali Yuga. So it's not shocking it's not shocking that this type of thing is happening in Kali Yuga. But we should understand it isn't the desire of Prabhupada and it isn't desire of Vedic literature that women perform the duties of men. And saying that they're using a rubber stamp Vaishnavi and then introducing gender equality is a disservice to Srila Prabhupada and his movement. But it is, I must admit, there's a word in German which is used in English, Zeitgeist, the mood of the times, especially among Prabhupada's followers who didn't live in India, who didn't observe Vedic culture, or who don't care for what he taught, or they're not reading these purports, or they just poo-poo these purports. Well, there's an excuse. This was for a bygone era. The whole Bhagavad Gita and the whole Bhagavatam are describing bygone eras. And Prabhupada wanted these books distributed so that the people of the here and now today would read them and adopt Vedic culture. So that his own disciples are opposing what he taught is, it's also very unfortunate, as Prabhupada wrote in this purports, very unfortunate. I think my time is getting close to up, and I guess I should leave a little time for questions, comments, or whatever.
Haribol Prabhu.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your class. Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your kind words of thank you. Thank you for the thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just mention, Leelakar, can I say a couple of things real quick? I'll be real quick.
Well, Maharaj, you're a Maharaj, so you can cut the queue. You can cut in front.
Culture. Yes, you can speak. I mean, I don't have anything profound to say. It was inevitable that you would, in the context of the verse, that it does provide an opportunity to again reiterate Srila Prabhupada's fundamental teachings about the relative positions of men and women, and how even in the modern times, ISKCON is not supposed to cave in to the modern tendencies of Kali Yuga. I think it was not Aravinda. I think it was Purushottama was the one that had a lot of trouble with Prabhupada.
Oh, okay. You would know better than me. Maybe I got the names mixed up.
Not because I was there. It's just written.
Right. I might have juxtaposed that. Sure, I agree. Yeah.
You're right. Purushottama.
Okay.
Purushottama, yeah.
Okay.
Prabhupada said that he was joking with him, and he said, Purushottama has gone to the moon. That's when the chaunts exploded or something. Purushottama has gone to the moon. Prabhupada didn't lament so much, but at the same time, of course, he loved all his disciples and would have preferred that Purushottama didn't become alienated because of that challenge. All right. I don't want to nitpick, but basically, that's certainly there are things now dividing our ISKCON society, like very, very opposing views about the efficacy and safety of the vaccines or so-called vaccines. There's division about they changed Prabhupada's books. And of course, as you're mentioning, there's tremendous division about Vaishnavi or female Diksha Guru and the role of women and men, and whether we should, and maybe a really fundamental root of the problem is the problem of hermeneutics. How are we supposed to read Prabhupada's books? How are we supposed to understand Prabhupada's books? So you have the very modern revisionist school, and then you have devotees like yourself who are more. I was speaking once with God Brother Abhiram Prabhu, and I told him, wow, you're very old school. And you know what he told me? He said, I didn't know there was any other school. So these are just some comments. Thank you for giving us a very healthy booster shot of Vedic culture. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Haribol Prabhu, I have something to say.
Sure.
And first of all, I'd like to thank you again for your service to Krishna. I really appreciate it. I read a lot about you on the internet, and I hear and I thank you for raising all those funds for what happened over there, and then your services as president of the Baroda ISKCON is great. I mean, I can't even describe with words and everything. So thank you very much. It's all completely agreeable, appreciated. So thank you. There's a couple things that, and of course, everybody has a right to have their own realizations on, what Prabhupada wanted. Even in the spiritual world, we can see that not everybody's the same. Everybody has a realization as a servant of Krishna. Some feel that they want to be mothers and fathers of Krishna. And even in Bhagavad Gita, it talks about austerity of speech, consistent speaking words that are truthful, beneficial, which you certainly do, and pleasing, which you certainly do. And also there's I was wondering, there's also what they call, I believe in a philosophy course, they say, there's a thing called begging the question. I remember circular reasoning. Circular reasoning. And it's not to say that what was said about empowerment of women is right or wrong. At the same time, there's a circular reasoning. Like if this wasn't done in Prabhupada's time, then it could not be bona fide at this time. So it's sort of like, okay, this cannot be bona fide. So it's sort of like it's begging the question. And even we have in Canto 4, Chapter 8, Text 54, it talks about time, place, and circumstance. Of course, that has to be done with intelligence to understand what are the appropriate adjustments to make sure that one is, but at the same time not go too, So these are just some thoughts to bring out there because, invariably there's a lot of people who are in agreement with not having women as temple presidents, et cetera, and at the same time there are devotees, very advanced devotees, who are in agreement with that. So these are just things that I thought that put out there, and also understanding that, everybody has a right to have their own realizations on what, what Prabhupada really wanted, et cetera. So I just thought I'd put it out there. And I thank you very much for your services, Prabhu. Your association and services are outstanding. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Right. Can I make a couple comments? When Prabhupada went to Tehran in Iran in 1976, and then he came to Bombay. So I was there in Bombay when he came. But in Tehran, he told devotees, you can eat in anyone's house vegetarian food. But in India, he said, don't eat in the homes of non-vegetarians cooked food, only fruit and milk. So this is an example of time and circumstance. Where in Tehran, everyone is a Muslim. And previously, they were followers of Vedic culture. So was Afghanistan. Some of us believe that it's very unfortunate that the United States government pulled out of Afghanistan, because what has happened is Islamic extremists who believe that killing non-Muslims is some kind of punya. The word punya means pious activity. So, these people they're demoniac. And the United States had them in check with 10,000 soldiers. And as soon as they pulled out of the country, the Islamic extremists took over the country. But 5,000 years ago, it was Gandhari, the wife of Dhritarashtra, was from Afghanistan. Anyway, Prabhupada said there in Iran, eat in anybody's house. So, he wanted to preach. If eating in the house of a Muslim vegetarian food was conducive for preaching, okay. But in India, it was different. Don't. Even they're Hindus, but if they're non-veg, only fruit and milk. So that's one example of that. And, Prabhupada's example was he didn't appoint women in positions of leadership. He didn't make them temple presidents. He didn't make them GBCs. And we have a lot of statements. I read one statement, but there are many, many statements where, men and women, in today's verse, there was a restricted, mixing of men and women because, the tendency for illicit sex. And in this country, well, illicit sex is glorified. You know that. It's a reverse morality. It's totally opposite to the Vedic morality. So yeah, we are, at a disadvantage when society wants to be totally immoral, and they're propagating this. Now, there are a large section of the population that believe, that there shouldn't be sex before marriage. There shouldn't be divorce. The Catholics and the so-called evangelical Christians, they believe that. Now, Prabhupada's criticism of the Christians was that they kill cows, and they think that the animals don't have an atma, that animals don't have a soul. Anyway, 100 times Prabhupada said we're not Hindus, but there's 100 times Prabhupada said we are Hindus. And if you look at the definition of Hinduism in the dictionary, it says the religion that originated from the Vedic religion of South Asia. So we fit, we're not born Hindus, many of us. Some of us in this group are, and people listening on Facebook, because I'm broadcasting this on my Facebook page. So in one sense, we're not Hindus because we're not born Indians, but our philosophy is Vedic, Prabhupada again and again, Vedic civilization, Vedic culture. And that's just, Hindu is just a euphemism, a synonym for that. So in that sense, we are Hindus because we follow the Vedic, and that's why Prabhupada, believe it or not, spent all of his money and most of his life after he had established ISKCON in the West in India, and all of his major projects. And by the grace of Ambarish Prabhu, this huge temple is being built in Mayapur, and that's in India. And Prabhupada said he ordered his leaders to meet in Mayapur, even though it was spread all over the world. Come to India. And when you come to India, you see the remnants of Vedic culture. So Prabhupada used the example of a dead elephant, that a dead elephant is still valuable. So you may means people say Vedic culture is dead in India, but the remnants are there. And those remnants, because of thousands of years of the rule of Rajarshis and the Varnashram system, which, in 1974, I don't know if Maharaj was present at Mayapur for Gaur Purnima, but I was. And that was the first major Gaur Purnima festival. 400 international devotees came. Prabhupada had observed it 1 or 2 years before also. But Prabhupada was there, and then we all went to Vrindavan. That's the tradition in ISKCON. You go to Mayapur for Gaur Purnima, then you go to Vrindavan. So in Vrindavan in 74, Prabhupada ordered all of the devotees to stay 1 more month in India, which wasn't the plan, but Prabhupada made that order. And he's divided the group of 400 half and half, and 200 he sent back to Mayapur to learn Varnashram. I remember this clearly. My name was in the group to go to Mayapur, but I had joined Achyutananda, and he was going to Bombay, so I went to Bombay, and Prabhupada came to Bombay, and that's another story. Anyway, so my point is Prabhupada wanted his disciples to spend significant time in India, learn the culture, learn Varnashram. I saw that directly, being in those days there with Prabhupada. Any other question?
Just to make a point, and thank you very much.
Sure.
If I were to go to some temples, and even indirectly show an attitude about that women should be this and that, something like that, I can be kicked out. That's the point. I can be kicked out. And what the speaker is saying something directly. If I say directly that women shouldn't be present, things like that,
yeah,
I can be definitely kicked out.
You're talking about temples, ISKCON temples in the United States. That's what you're talking.
Yeah, United States. Now, I have my personal thing, but I'm not going to bring my personal thing in here. But I'm saying that there's different devotees, and they're advanced, they're bona fide devotees that have different points of view, and they have Shastra to back that up, and also Prabhupada, Prabhupada Shastra to back that up. So I'm just saying that, it's not an impossibility that it's not a black or white situation.
I don't know, Prabhu. Prabhupada never did it. He didn't appoint women to these positions, and he was against the free mixing. It's just basic logic. If a woman is a temple president, she has to deal with the men. And men are not supposed to mix up with the women. Yeah, I just read you the purport, right? I mean, it's very clear. It's from, you can read it yourself, 7:12:9. You know, that if one cannot, this is quote unquote again, therefore Vedic civilization carefully restricts mingling between men and women. If one cannot understand the basic principle of restraining association between men and women, he is to be considered an animal. Now, Prabhupada wrote that, right? In his purport. He said that is the purport of this verse, 7:12:9. And if you make a woman a temple president, you're encouraging the mingling of men and women that Prabhupada said is animal life. How much stronger can that be? So, you know, you may say it's my opinion, but anyway, it's Prabhupada's opinion.
No, he's saying that the realization of the bodies are different, but the realization has to be according to the teaching.
Well, yeah.
You have a realization of, okay, and worship, you know, anything. But Prabhupada said, do it this way. So your realization has to go sadhu, shastra, you know, sadhu and shastra and guru.
Right.
Has to be according to sadhu, shastra, and guru.
Yeah, I mean,
that is not according to sadhu, shastra,
see,
guru, then
I understand what he's saying, that there is a reality where, you know, there are ISKCON temples where women are the presidents. And, you know, all I was doing was repeating what Prabhupada did and wrote in his purports. You know, so though that reality exists, but I feel that it's unfortunate, personally. I can't change it, you know, on an individual basis. I can't stick up my hand and say, stop this, you know, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm not on a political campaign here. I'm just repeating what Prabhupada wrote in his purports and what he practically did. He wanted us to follow the Varnashram system. And in the Varnashram system, the ladies, and for thousands of years in India, they've been following that. You know, they are housewives, grihinis.
What about in India? In India, they have ladies pujaris or ladies presidents or ladies like that?
Not now, no. I mean, that day may come. Right now, no. Nowhere. Yes.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Sure, Maharaj, you're the spiritual leader here.
Yeah, it just seems to keep coming back to the same point that we're supposed to be Prabhupada Anugas, we're supposed to be followers of Srila Prabhupada, and the Bhaktivedanta purports in his books, as well as conversations and other statements he made, but especially what was called the law books for 10,000 years, are to be followed. And I agree with you that they unequivocally uphold Vedic culture. And even as early as in Bhagavad Gita, I believe it's 141, is it? 140, 141 purport is so strong statement, 16th chapter, right in Bhagavad Gita.
16:7.
Making it so clear. Now, here's the crux. That the problem we have is that those who have taken a more Western modern point of view of social adjustment, they can't. They obviously they can't say it's in Prabhupada's purports, and there's something not going to eliminate. No editor would dare to just take all of it. There's so many statements in Bhagavad Gita. So the crux of the thing is the hermeneutical dimension of how to interpret, how to understand. We can't say you can't interpret, because sometimes interpretation is called for, but in many cases it is not. So maybe I shouldn't say interpret, but how to understand Prabhupada's books. And there, I don't want to make any offense, because Prabhu's guru happens to be Vidayananda Maharaj, who I have great respect for. But there is he and others are promoting the idea that we should see it in a very relative way, especially when Prabhupada talks about society and science, and that was. They say that this is not absolute. This is we can take it with a grain of salt. We should just see Srila Prabhupada as also conditioned by his own time, the turn of the century, 1900, Calcutta background, and so we shouldn't take it as incumbent or imperative for us to follow these instructions, because the instructions are not necessarily for us in the times that we live in. So this, I don't agree with that way of understanding Prabhupada's books. I would call it misunderstanding, but there are many who so I think that the debate and the discussion needs to focus very much on the hermeneutical aspect, how to understand Scripture.
Maharaj,
For us,
can I say something, Maharaj? Pardon? Are you finished?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I took so
No.
long.
See, hermeneutics means interpretation of biblical verses. And there is a parallel in Vedic literature. I mean, even the Vedanta Sutras, the Nyaya Sutras, the Shad Darshanas, the six philosophies, they, the logic, Vedanta, all of them focus on interpreting the Vedas. So, there's no question that interpretation was there. What I find dangerous is wanting to change the purports, because the purports are the explanation for the verses. You understand? I mean, is it interpreting the verses themselves, because the language may be terse, difficult to understand. So in order to make it easy to understand, you have the purports. And if you want to change the meaning of the purports, that is disingenuous, I feel. It doesn't matter. I don't want to get into anybody's name. This is a general principle, as it is. That was why Prabhupada, named his Gita as it is. We shouldn't change what Prabhupada wrote in his purports. And if you say that what Prabhupada wrote in his purports is not for today, that's just incorrect. Because Prabhupada said time and again, these are my instructions for human society and for my followers, both. So, saying that it's not meant for the here and now is just a contradiction of what Prabhupada himself said time and again. It's a self-evident thing. Otherwise, why did he write these purports and then bring those books on the boat, the first canto, and then go on writing the purports and saying it's for my disciples? Doesn't make logical sense. I'm sorry.
Prabhu, we have a senior Prabhupada disciple online. I don't know if you know him. His name is Tarun Krishna Prabhu. And first, I wanted out of Vaishnava etiquette, I just wanted to ask him whether he has any comments or questions in relationship to this guy. I don't think he ever asks. He usually does. Tarun Krishna Prabhu, would you happen to have anything to say?
Plenty.
Yes, Prabhu. It would be nice to hear from you.
Prabhu, what is your name again? I forgot. I was with you in Surat in 1984.
Oh, my name, Basu Ghosh Das.
Basu Ghosh, of course. Great scholar.
No.
So, couple things. And the Prabhupada memories, the memory of Srila Prabhupada, Jamuna says that Prabhupada said he would make me a GBC if I was a woman.
If I was a man. You mean if I was a man?
If I was a man.
Right.
Jamuna said, if I was a man, Prabhupada said, quoted that.
Right.
And
we have Tamal Krishna Maharaj on a video saying the same thing. Prabhupada was praising Jamuna to the high heavens, but he said, I would have made her a GBC if she were a man. So, there's a video of Tamal Krishna Maharaj saying that many, many years ago.
Gurudas asked Prabhupada, what do you do if your wife is more advanced than you are? Prabhupada says, follow in her footsteps. Out of context. Also, Hayagriva made that mistake. He edited 80 journeys to other planets, saying he removed some sections where Prabhupada said did not go to the moon.
Right.
But Prabhupada found out later, he said, now I cannot trust you. We don't care what the NASA says. According to our, Prabhupada said also with the fifth canto, when the fifth canto comes out, that was 1975, half of my disciples will leave. Because fifth canto says that the sun is closer than the moon. So there are many slight or very drastic differences. And we go with Prabhupada. Even though it may look sometimes like it's dead, Prabhupada may be not achieving popular vote.
Right.
We're not vox populi. Prabhupada would criticize that word, vox populi.
Right.
Because we were, many examples.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
When I joined in Henry Street, Bhavananda was president. But actually, Polika was the president. Bhavananda's wife.
Right.
She was running the show, but she could not take the position. I am president, but she was running she was controlling everything. In the background. Yeah. That's also possible.
Yes, I agree. I mean, just like Draupadi was managing the palace, the household of the Pandavas, it's not like because a woman is a householder, she has no job or she has nothing to do. And there's a really good verse in the 44th chapter of the 10th canto describing the gopis, what they were doing. And it was all, household affairs, but they were always thinking of Krishna. And it was simple village householder activities, that the gopis were in. Here it is. I've got it right in front of me. 10:44:15. The ladies of Vraja are the most fortunate of women because with their minds fully attached to Krishna and their throats always choked up with tears, they constantly sing about him while milking the cows, winnowing grain, churning butter, gathering cow dung for fuel, riding on swings, taking care of their crying babies, sprinkling the ground with water, cleaning their houses, and so on. By their exalted Krishna consciousness, they automatically acquire all desirable things. And, the gopis were living, they weren't living luxurious lives. They were living in huts and living very simply. And the women were, and the women, 10:44:15 in the Bhagavatam. So, it describes in India, women had their griha karya, their household duties for millennia. It's been going on for, and Prabhupada said the ideal system of life is the Indian village system. He said this. And Prabhupada, I was in Hyderabad when Prabhupada came in December 1976. There was 565 acres of land that was donated to him. It had been donated earlier. And he went there and, he appointed 3 leading disciples, Hansaduta, Mahamsa, and Tejas. Tejas is over here in New Talavan, to manage that farm. And he wanted to establish, ideal farming communities, agrarian lifestyle. I mean, that was, New Vrindavan was supposed to be that.
Yes, Farmati.
Haribol Prabhu, thank you for the lecture. I really enjoyed it. I just wanted to, the verse that you just quoted, just it illustrates what I was going to say. That a lot of people say that.
Louder.
Yes.
with the gopis. So it just kind of illustrates the point I was going to say, that a lot of people say that, you know, everybody has their own realizations, and some of these advanced Vaishnavis have their own realizations. But then look at the gopis. They're, you know, how they have the most advanced realization. So, but what did they do? You know, they still stuck to their, they didn't, they didn't go out and say, well, now I'm going to leave my husband and just, you know, follow Krishna. They still did all of their duties. They didn't try to seek out more quote unquote powerful positions. So a lot of people equate, you know, just having realization means, again, that you still, like Dad Lajpur said, you still have to follow Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, not just, realization doesn't mean your own mental speculation and coming to a realization. It means, realization means what you realize when you're truly an devotee and following Guru, Shastra. I don't know if it was...
Good point.
We have another proper disciple online. His name is Jita Tulaprabhu. I was wondering whether he has a comment just out of Vaishnava etiquette. Chatila Tulaprabhu, would you have anything to say, Prabhu, in relationship to this?
No.
Okay. Prabhu,
It's getting too late.
I think it's just a question.
It's getting too late. It's already 9 o'clock.
It's just a question of hermeneutics. And it's just kind of like, I don't know whether it's a black or white situation, because, you know, all these realizations are bona fide. So at the same time, I think it's just a question of hermeneutics and understanding Srila Prabhupada intelligently. And to say this is right and this is wrong, I don't know, because everybody has their own thing. But anyways, I guess this discussion can keep on going on other platforms.
Yeah, we already have 9 o'clock. We have to go.
Right. Okay.
Thank you very much, Pastor Ghosh.
Right. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much.
Rasa Krida, we can talk on the phone.
I will give you a call a little later.
Call me on the US number. Don't call me on the India number.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. And my pranams to Maharaj.
Maharaj, I think, already left. Yeah. Okay. Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Haribol.
Haribol, Haribol, Haribol.
Goodbye.
Oh, and goodbye to those seeing this on Facebook. Hare Krishna.